You've heard the phrase a million times, right? A day in the life. But have you ever really stopped to think about what it means? Turns out, that simple 24-hour snapshot is one of the most powerful ways we have to understand, well, pretty much everything. From art and history to science and what's coming next, so let's get into it.
And you've got to start here, with maybe the most famous day in the life ever recorded. That opening line from the Beatles' masterpiece? It just sets a scene that feels completely ordinary and at the same time massive. It's really our cultural ground zero for this whole idea.
But this concept is so much bigger than just one song, isn't it? You see it everywhere, in journalism, in research, in documentaries. We're just completely fascinated by how other people live their day-to-day lives. So what's the deal? What is it about this 24-hour window that just grabs our attention?
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to break this whole concept down by looking at it through 4 totally different lenses: as art, as history, as a scientific tool, and as a way to imagine the future. Then we'll tie it all together to see what makes a single day so powerful.
Okay, first up, the day as a piece of art. That Beatles song. It's not a straightforward story with a beginning, middle, and end. It's much more like a collage, where they're grabbing these little fragments of the world and piecing them together to create a mood, a feeling of a very specific moment in time.
What's so brilliant about it is how it perfectly mirrors our own experience. You've got John Lennon's parts, which are all about the outside world, stuff he read in the newspaper. And then boom, Paul McCartney cuts in with something completely different, this deeply personal, internal memory from his school days. That jump between the world out there and the world in our heads, that's what makes it feel so real.
And the inspiration for this collage was all over the map. It wasn't one single event. It was this jumble of things. The tragic death of a friend in a car crash, a bizarre little news item about potholes, a reference to a movie he was in, and of course that famous nod to the counterculture. This isn't a diary. It's like a dream summary of the entire 1967 vibe.
Okay, let's completely switch gears. We're going to jump from the psychedelic 60s way back to the brutal reality of the Middle Ages. Because back then, a day in the life was not some artistic collage of ideas. No way. It was a repetitive, physical grind just to survive.
You know, for a medieval peasant, the day wasn't defined by news headlines or daydreams. It was defined by the sun. Life started before dawn, and it ended at dusk, and pretty much every moment in between was filled with backbreaking labor. There was no such thing as work-life balance. Work was life. The day was the work.
And this is the key. For most of human history, this was the normal day in the life for almost everybody. For the 85% of the population that were peasants, every 24 hours was basically the same loop over and over. There was no escaping the work, and you definitely couldn't escape the taxes, which were all carefully written down in things like the Doomsday Book.
All right, so we've seen the day as art and as history. Now, let's get scientific, because researchers use this exact same concept as a formal tool to get a really deep, objective look at human behavior.
It's actually called the day in the life methodology. And the whole point is to capture a true insider's view instead of imposing some outside opinion. By filming someone for 6 or more hours, researchers can start to see the world as the subject sees it, to understand the little patterns and interactions that actually shape a person's life from the inside out. And this is a seriously rigorous process. It's not just pointing a camera and hitting record. There are interviews, detailed notes, but the most critical part is the feedback loop. They actually show the footage back to the participants. That day becomes a shared piece of data that the researcher and the subject analyze together. So we've gone from art to history to science, and for our final lens, we're going to look forward. Because we use the day in the life story not just to document what's happening now, but to imagine what will happen, especially with huge technologies like AI changing everything.
Think about a software developer. Today, their day is full of the nitty-gritty of writing code. But if you imagine a developer's day in, say, 2026, you see this massive shift. The focus isn't on writing code anymore, it's on directing an AI that writes the code. The human role becomes much more about strategy, not just the technical stuff.
And this is why it's so important. By mapping out a future day, you start to see what skills are going to be crucial. It's less about syntax and more about steering AI, thinking about the big picture architecture and talking directly with people. The developer goes from being a coder to being a creator, a strategist, an architect. So, let's pull all this together. We've looked at this one simple idea through 4 completely different lenses: an artistic collage, a historical reality, a scientific instrument, and a blueprint for the future. What does this all tell us? This really brings it home.
That same 24-hour frame can be subjective or objective, historical or looking ahead. It can capture the mood of an entire generation, the brutal reality of survival, the tiny details of human behavior, or even the shape of jobs that don't exist yet. It's an unbelievably versatile tool.
And really, what this all comes down to is scale. The 24-hour day works so well as a framework because it's the fundamental unit of our experience. It takes these huge abstract concepts, like a cultural moment, a historical era, a technological revolution, and it makes them personal. It brings them down to a level we can all instantly grasp.
And that, of course, brings it all right back to you. If we apply these same lenses to your daily routine, what would it show? An artistic collage, a historical pattern, a set of scientific data, or maybe a blueprint for your own future? Something to think about.